I'm the Principal Librarian for Science and Engineering. At this workshop, we hope to provide you with assistance when applying for NRF rating. The format of the seminar will be as follows. After me, there will be a set of 3 presentations with a time to ask questions afterwards. Thereafter, the seminar has been set up for you to have a one-on-one session with a librarian to assist you with your individual CV and application. How this will take place will be explained after the question and answer session. During the presentation, we would cover the following topics: bibliometric services available to you throughout the year. We would relate bibliometric indicators to your research outputs so that you can showcase your work for the NRF rating application. We would also emphasize the role of Orchid in simplifying and reducing manual processes for your current and future reporting needs. We will briefly take you through the library checklist for NRF rating application so that you can ensure all your needs are met throughout your application process. And then we will open the floor for questions and answers. The service will enable you to showcase your research excellence and impact by using bibliometric applying for rating and promotion. Increasingly, funders and research evaluating organizations are requiring to show evidence of return on investment to support their decision making. Bibliometrics is a quantitative analysis on published contents, including the number of your contributions, visibility indicators of your research outputs, and indicators that show how much users are engaging with your outputs. Additionally, we assist you with setting up author profiles and IDs, including Orchid ID records. Collate indicators for your publications to generate evidence of research impact reports and assist you with interpreting the indicators to support your applications. I will now hand over to my colleague Fadil, who will talk about indicators for the NRF rating application. Thank you, Fadil.
Thanks, Amina. Let me just share my screen over here. If you don't see it, please stop me. Okay. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fadil, and I service a space in the library called the Research Commons, which specifically caters to staff and postgraduate students. And for my portion of this presentation, I'll be speaking to bibliometric indicators. Okay, so just as a quick disclaimer, these citations, bibliometric indicators are exactly that, they're indicators. And what I'm saying is that while they provide really useful information, they do not necessarily indicate the entire story. I don't believe any academic would feel comfortable if their entire career was defined by a single numerical value, an H-index, for example. Nevertheless, they do provide some sort of scope into your academic career and are useful in that sense. And here's how. Okay, so over here we have the word metrics. Metrics is a general term, sort of an umbrella term, that actually encompasses 3 different types of metrics. Essentially, what metrics do is it provides funders with a measurement of you as an author, your works, and provides some sort of visibility indicator and an understanding of the impact that you and your works have. I'll speak to that point through our different types of metrics. I do believe some of this will sound familiar to you. We go over here with our 3 metrics. We've got author metrics, journal metrics, and article metrics. So author metrics, yeah, let's start at the beginning, right? With you, the researcher who creates these works, author metrics. So these, as I'm sure you would most likely have heard of, are associated with you, your name, your profile on Scopus, or your profile on Web of Science, Orchid, These include, just as an example, the total amount of citations you've received over the span of your career. You know, it includes how productive you are as an author. You know, your and then or your is metric, as you all would know. And these pretty much all sum up and speaks to just how much reach you have as an author, or rather it sums up how much visibility you have as an author. And the second type of metrics we've got over here is journal metrics, and essentially the journal in which you publish in also has some crucial metrics that funders often find useful when making decisions regarding funding. I think more importantly, for you as an author, another consideration would be that journals that are frequently cited have a higher journal impact factor, and are thus placed in higher quartiles for their subject within indexing databases. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that they are more often the journals that are looked at first. Visibility again. So in terms of visibility, well, they're the most accessed in terms of metrics, so they're definitely the most visible. Hope that makes sense. And then article metrics, which are very popular and familiar to a lot of us. When we refer to article metrics, we're talking about, your traditional article citations. How many citations has your article received? Alt metric data, on the other hand, refers to the amount of attention your article receives online. I'll speak to that a little bit more later on. Okay, so over here on this slide, I've just included a couple of images of what these metrics look like within these indexing databases, within these platforms that we're going to look at. Over here we have Publons, which chooses to display its author details very directly. So if you look at the highlighted section from left to right, you'll see, as I mentioned, for instance, your total output count. It's called publications over here. Right next to that, you've got the total amount of times you've been cited. These numbers look really good. On paper, they look really nice, make you look really good. And then right next to the total time cited, you've got your H index. That's a really useful number. And then Publons also keeps track of verified reviews. The next slide over here, I've got a little view of Scopus. So on this side, which is, look at what an article looks like. Sorry, just an article in particular, a particular article in Scopus. And we can see some article metrics over here on the right. So over there, we have the total amount of citations for this article, which is also a very useful number. And then just below that, we have some metrics like the field-weighted citation impact. But visit Scopus if you feel like learning some more about that. Again, just in terms of making yourself look better, these numbers can be really useful. Okay, so over here, I'm just trying to show you the sources of all these metrics. The sources, when I say sources, I mean the databases that might sound familiar to you. For instance, we've just seen what Publons looks like, your author profile looks like. Another one, for example, that will be very familiar is Google Scholar. You can pick up author metrics based on your activity via Google Scholar, your citations, your H index. And then Orchid is also a great place for you to get your total output count, because, as you know, particularly because it integrates, you might not know this, but I will talk to this later, but Orchid integrates and collates all your works across multiple platforms, which is really cool. And then if you need metrics in order to find out what journal to publish in, you'd head to JCR or Journal Citation Reports, which is powered by Clarivate or Web of Science. And then Scopus is another leading indexing database in terms of journal metrics. With regards to article metrics, you'll be able to find, your traditional citations on either Web of Science or Scopus. Google Scholar is also a very important place to get your citations. I do want to make mention of the second point over there, which speaks to PlumX metrics. You'll also find that on Scopus. You'll find your PlumX metrics on Scopus. What PlumX does is it actually tallies things such as, the number of times your article was downloaded, or the amount of times your article was saved into Mendeley, for instance. If your article was mentioned in a Wikipedia page, Plum X will count that as well. News coverage. So you should definitely take a look at what your activity is like outside of, your traditional old-fashioned citations. You might find some interesting stuff over there. Okay. So strengths and weaknesses. So we've kind of spoken to the strengths in particular of these metrics. It's an objective estimation of research. You'll be able to see your visibility, your influence, and to some degree, the quality of your work, sure. But I just want to make note of some of the weaknesses, unfortunately, of these metrics. So number one, it's affected by time, the discipline and the document type. So when I say affected by time, it's in two ways. And the first is that there are bound to be changes in perspective within the discipline, So while citations might be high in the beginning of the decade, they could slow down towards the end of the decade, But of course, the complete opposite could be true, where the attention of your works actually receives more attention and picks up later on in life, So it's affected by time in that sense. And then in the second way is that it's just a logical argument that articles that have been in existence for a longer period of time have a longer lifespan versus an article that was published last week. So, there's more of a chance to be visible, to be accessed if you've been in the game for a longer period of time. Okay, so regarding the second point, reason for citation is in question. So it's not rare to find that an article is highly cited because academics citing the document actually disagree with the claims that are being made in the article, if you know what I mean. So controversial articles actually tend to receive a lot of attention because they're being disagreed with or argued over. And that's a really interesting point. The third point over there, it's dependent on database coverage. This is something that's really out of our control. Certain databases index certain subjects better. So while you might find one article in Google Scholar, you might not find it in Scopus. If you find it in Web of Science, you might not find it in Google Scholar. So that tends to happen with these databases, unfortunately. And then finally, I think it's a fitting point to end this particular section off on, and ironically rings true with the first point I made. These metrics just do not tell the entire story. However, we can reconcile and gain a better understanding if we use these metrics in tandem with one another. So that need to combine them is really important. So as an example, maybe don't just look at your article's low or high citation count and then refuse to look at the fact that your article was published in a high journal impact factor journal or low impact factor journal for that matter. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, basically what you need to do is look at things within the context that they are in order to gain a better understanding of things. And don't just take these metrics by face value. So my next 4 slides will just be a great way for you to sort of map out exactly where all of these things fit into your rating form, in terms of your CV and your application. Yeah, research evaluation attributes. So an attribute like productivity is really important. When I say productivity, what do I mean? I mean the sheer volume of research output. How many papers have you published? Your total output count. The metric would be your total output count. You'd find that metric might come in handy in the CV or personal profile section of your form. You would definitely add it over there. If you're someone who's published a lot, you might find that showing that off is important to you. And then also in the application section under self-assessment, you might want to add that number over there just to show how productive you've been. In terms of research excellence, in terms of prestige and how visible you are, the journal metrics might be important here. I say might because it's an indirect indicator of just how well your article is doing in terms of metrics. Again, don't take it at face value. These journal metrics are finicky, but yeah, but it can be used in the NRF form under, again, your CV section in terms of a personal profile. If you've been published in a high impact factor journal, you might want to show that, and then also in your application section under best 5 research outputs in the last 8 years, that's also where you'd like to show that 4 of my 5 articles have been published in really high impact factor journals. You might think that would be interesting for funders to know. In terms of your research impact, in terms of academia, as in, when I say academia, I mean, your scholars, your peers, that would be, how many citations you've received. If others are citing you, it's really important. If your H index is high, that metric really speaks to your influence in academia. And again, it can be used in the CV section of your personal profile. And again, you'd want to show off, if you have to show off your 5 best, you'd show off the ones that are receiving the most citations, right? So under the best research outputs in the last 8 years, you'd definitely add your publications that have been cited the most. And it just makes sense. And in terms of research impact with regards to society, outside of the academic sphere, we're speaking about, news coverage, media coverage, policy documents, that usage counting. I think this is where PlumX I mentioned earlier comes into play, definitely. How are you affecting the outside world and not just your academic peers? I think that's really important in terms of research impact. Yeah, you'd add this under your best research outputs in the last 8 years. So innovation, your unique findings, according to topics or subjects in a database like Scopus, have you made a unique finding? You could add that as well in both your CV, your personal profile, and your application section. And then if you've collaborated internationally, that also looks really good. You'd use Scopus again to check out your percentage collaborations, and you'd use it in your NRF form under the CV personal profile section. Okay, so that's basically it for me. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Howard, who's going to take over from me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Awad from the Science and Engineering Libraries team, and I would be covering on the role of OrchID. You might have already prompted to create an OrchID whenever you apply for application for the NRF application or by any other prompt. So I'm going to show you how you can make it work the best for you. So the word OrchID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor Identifier. So OrchID is a digital platform that provides a unique identification, which is a permanent one that you can carry throughout your career life. And basically, the platform also allows your ID to be connected with your publications. So this would increase your visibility and accurate representation of your work, your research-related information, basically. And the platform also allows to connect and collect research-related information with other integrated platforms. So those platforms could belong to the publisher, funding organizations, and institutions. So UCT would be one of them. And basically at UCT, for example, the ERA system is also one of the platform that's integrated, that's being integrated, that's in the process. And basically you can also link with the UCT or ERA system. Okay, this page is basically a pictorial representation of integrated platforms at the background with Orchid platform. So if you have your OrchID and your information is there, then the other the other platforms would be able to read and collect and provide information. For instance, the employer would be able to, if you allow or if you authorize the data exchange between your Orchid record and the employer, basically they can feed the employment information to your Orchid record, and the same thing with the funding, and the same thing with the publisher. Most probably you might have already prompted to link your, whenever you submit your publication to your Orchid. So by doing so, you minimize the amount of manual processes that you have to put into your Orchid instead of your Orchid record, instead of you manually inputting this is my publication and claiming that's your publication. If you allow or if you authorize the data exchange between the publisher and Orchid record, then basically that information comes from the publisher and it would give it more trustworthy information. Okay, so if we see related to the publisher, there are additional platforms that also help the publisher to disseminate publications, and usually there are citation databases and more analytical platforms, and so especially like Scopus and Researcher ID, which belongs to Clarivate, they also try to identify researchers. And since those platforms also integrated with the Orchid platform, the author or you as a researcher is able to authorize the data exchange between the two platforms. So your research and your research information or research output and additional relevant informations would be accurately connected to you. So we would encourage you to authorize those ones. So yeah. Okay. Still, if you have a question saying like, why do I have to link my Orchid record to other platforms? Basically, to create a reliable and trusted content in your OrchID. And this is a matter of, as I have earlier mentioned, it's a matter of comparing whether you are claiming the publication or whether the publisher is saying this is his publication or her publication. And the assertion, the authorship assertion is coming from the publisher, and it would make it the same information. And the same also works with the institutions and funding organizations. However, you have a full control over what information is shared, and you have a full control over to whom you would like to share. So there are 3 levels. So one of them is basically you can make it public, and this is to individuals, or you can close all sharing and you can have it to your own self as well. So you have a full control and you can manage, you're able to manage your own record within the OrchID. Okay. So we can say now that any authorized platforms are trusted. So this could be in organizations, like for example, if you link Scopus with your OrchID, then Scopus would be one of the trusted organizations. And at the same time, OrchID or the Orchid platform also allows you to add individuals to populate your work, so you can authorize them also to do the same thing. So it's a matter of going to your Orchid record and go to the setting, and you can add individuals as a trusted source, a trusted individuals to add information. Okay. So the next question would be, how do I connect and collect to platforms with my OrchID? Basically, there are 2 ways. OrchID have a list of those trusted organizations or optional platforms So it's just a matter of going and following the prompt that would give you. And another option is basically you can go to the other platforms, for example, Scopus, Publons, and specific journal platforms when you submit your publications, or by any means you can go there, and in the setting usually you would see connect to Orchid button. So that would allow you, that would start the linking and authorizing process. So that way you would simplify the amount of manual work you would do. And yeah, so this is just to give you an example of properly, nicely populated Orchid record. And I just want to draw your attention to the bottom corner where you can see the author, the Scopus ID, and the loop, and basically the researcher IDs have been already connected to the researcher's record, and the data exchange is also basically authorized. And in addition to that, if you have any additional researcher profiles, or if you have your own website where you have already listed your work and you have given your biography there, still there is an option that you can add those links. But websites and social links are not necessarily integrated with the Orchid platform, but you can list them as a link for whoever would like to see your record, and basically to find additional information about your work. So the other earlier I have been mentioning about the source of specific publication. For example, if we see this publication, I want to draw your attention for this one. This is one of the databases or a source of publication. Basically, instead of your name appearing as a source, then basically Crossref is the source. So that's the kind of reliable, trusted information that Orchid is trying to provide you and simplify your work. So if you need additional information, basically, please check. You can contact us. One of the library, we can provide you with one-on-one help. We can assist you if you want. In addition to that, we have got Orchid at UCT Library Guide. You can go there and you can have more information about it. And there's a very nice, good, well designed Orchid page also at the Research Support tab. So you can also use all these resources to have basically to work on your Orchid. So by this, I would encourage you, after the presentations, to join the one-on-one session with our colleagues, so that you would be able to link and do some of it within the rest of the session. By this, I would hand it to my colleague Jeremiah, and he would be talking about the library checklist for the NRF rating that you can check. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeremiah Peterson. I'm part of the science and engineering team. Anthea and I will be presenting this part of the presentation. So you would have seen the NRF or the library support for the NRF rating application document as part of this meeting invitation. And the document is really it outlines our support from the library side for NRF rating applications. And that support is in providing bibliometric data, providing some guidance on appropriate metrics for certain things, and then also some support in identifying, if applicable, contribution to niche research areas. So to find the document on our library's website, you can navigate to lib.uct.ac.za, and you'll find it under Research, your research journey. And finally, at the bottom, under Measure Your Impact, the library support for NRF rating applications. section the NRF rating application, and so that is the CV and the application. So in the CV, they speak of we speak of researcher accounts, and Awad and Fadil has covered some of this. And so the accounts that need some intervention from your side or with our support is the Orchid account, your Publons account, and Google Scholar. The two accounts that are created automatically once your publications are indexed within these databases is your Web of Science researcher ID and your Scopus author ID. So has mentioned the importance of setting up integrations with Orchid, and this is somewhat administrative, but fortunately once it's done and once it's set up properly, it's only something that you have to do once. And so the important integrations of Orchid is with the UCT's ERA, and then your research ID or Publons, and that you get from Web of Science, and then your author ID that you get from Scopus. In the second part of the NRF application, you have your application section. And in this section, the research outputs can be informed by your Orchid profile that is now set up. And under additional details, you can add your Google Scholar H index, which you'd get once your Google Scholar account is set up. So in this section, there are two places for narrative. And the first one is the best 5 research outputs in the last 8 years. And so we can provide metric information of publications that you provide us. And so you could identify publications based on it being innovative outputs or novel knowledge produced in niche or highly specialized areas. Or alternatively, we can provide a metrics report of the 5 best publications based on the metrics that are available to us. And that we'll find on SciVal, Scopus, Web of Science, and any other relevant platforms that are perhaps discipline specific. And so the second bit of narrative is a brief description of completed research and self-assessment of research output. So for this, in order to provide you with some detail that you can draw from, we can provide a basic bibliometrics report of the last 8 years. And for us, a basic bibliometrics report would comprise of data the 3 main databases, indexing databases, which is Google Scholar, Scopus, and Web of Science. But of course, depending on discipline and need, this can be supplemented with data from other areas. And in this section again, from our side, we can provide more detail for notable works as informed by the researcher. And this could include multiple publications emanating from one research project. And we know oftentimes with bigger research projects, there are often master's or PhD projects connected with the bigger project. And that is useful information for us to have to be able to tell a better story. As Fadil has indicated, metrics work really well if they put into a wider context. So now I'm going to hand over to Anthea to speak about the third section of the document, which is the narrative.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you, Jeremiah. So I'm Anthea Paulson, as Jeremiah had said, and I am from the Law Library and one of the librarians based in the Law Library. So I'm going to speak a bit about the narrative and the purpose of the narrative. So one of the value-added services that we offer as the librarians is to assist you in creating a narrative. And this narrative is informed by both the quantitative bibliometric data collected as well as the information that is supplied by you as the researcher. So as you've heard earlier by Fadil as well as Awad, my colleagues, how they explain to you how they actually access the quantitative data. The narrative will also feed into the required application section of the NRF rating form, as well as any other additional information that can be added or appended to the whole application. So there are 4 questions that we would like you to consider when completing the narrative. And firstly, we'd like you to consider, are you able to frame the impact of your research? So for example, you could think about how your research has positively contributed to the UN SDGs, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, or any other societal development in that framework. And additionally, you can also think about the impact your research has had on national policy development, on legislation, as well as any other standards. And secondly, has your research resulted in new research areas? So here you could think about or concentrate on any other niche and highly specialized research areas that have emerged from your work, or any other cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary research. And then you also could consider, what is it that you have contributed to the advancement of your discipline? The third question that we'd like you to consider is, have you had any unique or special collaborations? So as my colleague Fidel has mentioned, that there's a tool in Scopus known as SciVal, where we as librarians can produce analytics on local, national, and international collaborations. And then you also could think about, have you had any unique collaborations with non-academic institutions or international collaborations where you were perhaps the lead author and provided the most contributions? So this is what we'd like you to focus on. And the last question we'd like you to consider is there anything of significance about your research or your research career that is not necessarily evident in traditional metrics? So as you've heard quite a bit about the traditional and non-traditional metrics, and so here this where it comes into play, where for instance you've got to think about or consider, how is your research featured in popular news or has sparked conversation in social media, for example? So many of the platforms that we now look at have features where you can find data on Twitter feeds, Facebook mentions, Mendeley captures views, and other non-traditional metrics. So just to look at the checklist for the researcher, and it's a very practical document that you could make use of during the application process. So when you look at your CV, you can actually just tick in the boxes and see, has your Orchid account been created? Has the Publons account been created? Has the publications been claimed in Publons? And then in the application, you can ask, have you provided the librarian with a list of the best 5 publications, or contacted the librarian to ask for the best 5 publications according to available metrics? And then, as I've mentioned earlier about the narrative, have you provided the librarian with a notable work for inclusion in an extended report or the Okay, just to make a note that you need to at least give us 2 weeks to prepare a really good and thorough document, as well as the narrative for you, so that we can go through all the necessary platforms as well as the databases and sites to ensure that we've covered and collated all the necessary data as well as information. And then the librarians, that you can contact the principal librarians for each faculty and just supply you with the information for the principal librarians. So for Trade and Commerce, it's Glenys Johnson. Engineering and the Built Environment, Amina Adam. Health Sciences, Brandon Adams. Humanities, Alex D'Angelo. Law, Sadiq Iran. And Science, Amina Adam. Thanks, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Anthea. So just to end off our section, this is just a brief summary of what Anthea and I have just presented. So this document is what we've put together to be as comprehensive as possible, detailing the type of support that we can offer specifically for NRF rating applications. It would be good if you could read this beforehand as preparation when you meet with your subject librarian, so that you have are aware of what kinds of questions you can expect in that meeting. The NRF rating application allows for you to have appendices, and one of the value-added services that we've started offering is a creation of a narrative, a report that brings together both quantitative and qualitative data as informed by both the metrics and you, the researcher. The checklist is there really to help you track progress through your application, and hopefully it becomes a tool that helps make the application a lot easier, especially considering how much data informs the application. Thank you, colleagues.
Afternoon, colleagues. My name is Jill Claassen, and I will be overseeing the rest of the session. So we have heard that the bibliometrics indicators measure impact and visibility through author, journal, and article metrics. It was stressed that author IDs are critical to measure impact and to take credit for your own research output. And our presentations concluded with a focus on the library's NRF rating checklist, which sketched the role of the library to provide support in the researcher's application. I'm now going to open up the floor if you have any questions of clarity that you'd like to ask the presenters on any part of their presentation. And thereafter, we will have a one-on-one session that you can have with a librarian. And the one-on-one session will focus on what you need for your CV to be up to date. So your researcher's ID and profiles. So your Orchid, Scopus, and Publons. So for those who now would like to have, I'm just going to give you a moment. You may have some questions. Just in advance, if I pronounce your name incorrectly, I do apologize. There is one hand up. Do I pronounce it right? Sadia, you may ask the question.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I have two questions. I have actually started my Orchid profile just before the session. It gives you an option. Firstly, it doesn't give you an option to join Google Scholar, which is what I've seen in your presentation. So I'm just curious about that. And secondly, when you call up one of the linked sites, it calls up your PhD students' dissertations. I'm looking now specifically at the base search net. So I would like, so when it's calling up your PhD students or the stuff that you've supervised, I'm imagining that is there a way to claim supervision rather than, I don't want it to put me down as an author, but I'm not sure how to distinguish those since it's calling up all of my supervision as well.
Okay, thanks so much for those two questions. I'm going to ask Awa to respond to both of them. Just to say, Sadia, the one-on-one session that will be taking place afterwards, Ingrid, for example, would connect with you, and so you would have, you'd be able to put some of the questions that you have. You'd be able to actually resolve the challenges that you are currently seeing. Okay, so I'm going to ask Awad to respond to those two questions. Thanks, Awad.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The Orchid ID have not integrated their platform with Google Scholar. but Google Scholar is in the process of preparing for the integration. But currently, what we can do is we can extract the bibliometric information from Google Scholar and import it manually. So that's what we can do. So I'm not exactly sure, maybe I can check my slides, but the Google Scholar is not integrated, but you can add it as one of your profile link or web links that you can that you want researchers or other interested parties who are looking at your Orchid record. So, but at the background, there is no integration between the two platforms yet. It's not public yet, at least. Okay. With regards to adding, of course, like when you try to pull information from other platforms, you might see some publication that are not yours. So you would need to remove them from you. With regards to thesis, I haven't seen any specific for thesis like as a supervision, but I will find out more and give you more detailed information. But there is a section that you can add manually, and you can edit records in Orchid.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Awad. And again, Sadia, we're hoping that you would stay so that Ingrid would be able to assist you further. Hey,
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Izindi, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Please do ask a question.
I was just wondering, how does one go about to ask help with the librarians?
Okay, that's a great question, because that is what we will be doing after this time of Q&A, where we will then team you up with a librarian, and then the librarian would be able to assist you immediately as part of the seminar time.
Thank you.
We're hoping that you still have some time, at least until 2 o'clock. So we'll pair you up with the librarian who would be able to assist you with what you need for your, at least for your CV and then application as well. Some more questions? If I'm not seeing a hand, okay. Anista, you may go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, I might have missed it. I just wanted to know, are the slides from the talks available somewhere?
Yes. Fadil can put it into the chat right now if that's what you'd like. Otherwise, Jackie and Roshan will formally email it to you. But the slides are already available, and Fadil can just put the set of slides into the chat. Okay, so I had been alluding to how I've been alluding to the fact that there will be a one-on-one session. So how this will take place in MS Teams is we now have about 40 minutes left of our session. So we would like to cordially invite you for a one-on-one session with the librarians who will focus on your researcher IDs and profile. And they will focus on a lot of what Awad was talking about, the integrations specifically of the systems into Orchid, for example, and all the colleagues mentioned some of that as well. So how will this work, right? So if you are willing to be part of the one-on-one session with the librarian, you would put your name and faculty into the chat box. And then we will pair you up with the librarian right now. And then the librarian will call you via MS Teams. And of course, that means that you need to have your, you need to have your UCT account. I noted that Carrie Pike and is it Dean? You haven't come to the meeting with your UCT credentials, but we would then be able to call you, and that through that 30-minute or so engagement, the librarian would work with you personally to ensure, to provide the assistance that is needed for your own CV and where you're at in terms of your application. Of course, it would mean that there'll probably be a second round or follow-up consultation, but that's quite obvious. So if you would like to spare the 30 minutes now or so, and you have put your name into the chat box with your faculty, we'll pair you up. And my colleagues will be calling you via MS Team phone. So I hope all of you have received phone calls via MS Teams. I know I hope I'm not making too many assumptions. But MS Team, yeah. So, okay, so I see a few. I'm going to already be pairing you up. And then Amina would help me. For those who don't have the time today to remain and have the one-on-one session, you would call or contact the principal librarians on the list that Jeremiah had shown as part of the NRF rating checklist document. The list of principal librarians are listed per faculty. And so please contact them, and then they will pair you up with the librarian. Okay, so I'm going to go through it. You're going to have to be, let me just give me a minute. Okay, let's start. Fatima, Anthea, I hope that's fine. Thanks, Jeremiah, for showing the principal librarian's details. Ernesta, I'm going to ask Nampla. Nampla, would you call Ernesta, please?
Will do so, Jill.
Thanks, Nampla. So Nampla will be calling you, Ernesta. Isadine, thanks so much for putting in your UCT credentials, your UCT email address. I am going to ask Kobisa to contact you. Kobisa, is that fine with you?
Yes, we'll do, Jill. Okay. Thanks.
Excellent. And then Heidi, Awat will be calling you. Awat, is that fine with you? Heidi, is that fine with you?
Yes, that's great, thanks, but not today. So
okay, so you'll be in contact with Awat. So does that mean Heidi, you're not available right now for the one-on-one session, the 30-minute one-on-one session, but you will be in in the next day or so, and you'll arrange accordingly.
If I can just ask for clarity, on the one hand, you said we should prepare, and on the other hand, we're having a, there's the opportunity to have the one-on-one now. So I was a little confused.
Okay. It's really just to check that your researcher IDs and profiles are integrated, and you have claimed all your publications.
Then I have time now.
You have time now, Heidi. Yes. Okay, great.
Okay, I'll meet you now.
Awat, so you'll go with Heidi.
Yes.
Hamida Park. Awat, that's fine with you. Hamida Parker. Hi, Amida. I know you had started your application quite early. Maureen, can I put you with Hamida, please? Is that fine with you?
That's fine, Jill.
Okay, great. Thank you. Samira, Maureen will be calling you via MS Teams. Carrie,
Thank you.
Can I ask Tamsin if you can call Carrie? Tamsin, is that fine with you?
That's fine with me, Jill.
We'll work for a call. Let me know if it's a problem. So okay, so yeah, I didn't find, yeah. So Carrie Pike, how would Tamsin call you, Carrie? Carrie,
would she be able to call me using what I'm logged in as? Or is maybe I can email Tamsin an alternative message? Or I could try call Tamsin?
I should be able to call you from here, but I can always test it out, Carrie, if you're okay with that.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so you've arranged that. Thanks so much. So Sarah saying, I have another meeting. Okay, so that's fine. Sarah, with which faculty are you? Sarah, so with which faculty are you? Okay. You either you will make contact with, I see you with science, astronomy. Jeremiah, would you contact Sarah to arrange a one-on-one?
That's fine, I can do that. So.
Thanks so much, Jeremiah, but you're available here still, just in case. Arlene, Glennis, would you take Arlene?
Yes, Arlene and I will make arrangements. I think, Arlene, correct me if I'm wrong, outside of this meeting or in this meeting, Arlene? I think maybe Arlene's had to leave as well, Jill.
Okay, perfect.
So I'll be in contact. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all good. And then Mary Jessica, so she's here and she's from Health Sciences, but do any of the colleagues want to take Mary Jessica and then maybe contact her? Could Nampla's already does have someone.
Is Kay available?
I've got very bad connection, so I'm not sure whether now is a good time for me, but I'd like to maybe make contact with Brandon at a later stage if possible.
That's fine.
Mary, don't you just, I know Brandon is here, of course, and he will,
yes.
But don't you want to try and push through with a bad connection, or will it irritate you?
We can try. No.
Okay.
No, we can try. I'm just worried it might be inconvenient and I don't want to drop the call.
Of course, but let's try for, for a couple of minutes, maybe the internet will behave and be stable.
Yes.
Can I just ask the colleagues if, let me just check.
Jill. Sorry, Jill. I'm happy to do Mary.
Okay,
Mary
awesome.
Jessica.
Okay, so okay, great. Would you call her then, Kay? And you heard that her internet may be unstable.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. So, Kashifa will call you, Mary. Thanks, Tamsin, for making arrangements with Carrie. Okay, so there aren't others in this call that I can see. Amina, if I've missed anybody, you let me know.
Covered everyone, Jill. You have covered everyone. I double checked.
Okay.
Can I am struggling to connect with Heidi, and if she can give me, Heidi, if you can hear me, can you please give me your Gmail, because your UCT email is not working, so maybe we can connect by Zoom if you prefer.
Sure. I will type it into the chat.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Jill.
Yes, Solveig.
Hello, colleagues. I am teamed up with George Mahashi. I know that I had already put my name down on the spreadsheet, but just to say that I have contacted George and we have made an arrangement to meet. So that's to clap off.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Solveig. I did note that that you was here initially, but yeah, great. Thanks so much.
I'm still here, but we are chatting. Thanks.
Oh, great,
That was
George.
George.
Excellent. Excellent. Anthea, I see Anthea's hand.
I'm trying to get hold of Fatima Osman, but I see she's using another email address. So I'd like to find out from her if she'd like to meet via the MS Teams.
Okay, let's see if Fatima's still in the participants list. Let's just see. Is she still yeah, let's just see. I think I went past the name. Hello? Is that you, Fatima? No, Fatima is not here.
Oh.
Anthea. So there is, of course, a UCT email address, and she had indicated that she wanted help. Would you try and contact her now, maybe?
Yeah. Okay.
And are we supposed to leave this meeting?
George, is that you?
This is Izzedine.
Izzedine. Okay. If you are able to connect with your librarian, who was your librarian again, Izzedine?
I think the name is pronounced Kobisa.
Oh, Kobisa. Okay.
Yes,
so,
I'm trying to get hold of you, Izzedine. I tried calling you twice already, so I was sending you an email now.
And I got a
try again.
I got a voicemail through my email.
Okay. Can we try again?
Could it be, Kobisa, could it be possibly that Izzedine has a busy status?
I'm not sure because it was ringing, so it rang twice.
Oh, okay. Do you want to continue trying?
I want to try again, yes.
Or do I have to leave this meeting to get to be able?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, you will have to leave the meeting. We'll see you, I'm sure, and best wishes with your process. Okay, and Esther Nampla has a message for you. Apologies, I should have said that quite clearly, that of course you would leave this meeting when you have your one-on-one session with the librarian. Apologies that I didn't make it clear, because it's not possible to have the two sessions open at the same time. Salve, are you wanting to make another comment?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all good. All good, all good. Okay. Susanna said, Susanna said that she will make contact with Refillware, which is great. Thanks, Suzanne, for that. Shame, I think Izzedine is struggling. Hi, Izzedine.
Somehow I came back to here. I'll try to log out and see what happens.
Okay, take care. Okay. Do we have other researchers as part of our group still? I see George, you're still here. George, there isn't anything else that we will be doing as a big group. If you arranged for a separate time with Solveig.
Yeah, thank you. I'll leave the room. I've been chatting with Solveig.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, then please stay if that's what you would like to do. But you would, but the okay, the rest of the time, of course, is the one-on-one that you would be having. And best wishes with your application, George.
Thank you.
Just open up the chat. Okay. Thanks, Ingrid. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
Colleagues, I don't think there are any other, I don't see any other, oh, Sadia is in here, is here still. Okay, so my suggestion would be, you know, now we would, between Armin and I, we would look at the list of RSVPs, and then we would organize possibly for you to contact them, but maybe